Welcome, my friends, to the podcast that never ends, where we gather our clan and talk about peace and love in our lives, the difficulties along the journey, and how we rise up. We will experience a little thing I call Cluberty together, find our sweet spot, and planting our seeds to watch them grow in our magic garden. I'm Uncle Dave, and our transformation starts right here. All right, so just to make sure that you understand that we're going to video it, and I am going to start releasing the videos, and you're okay with me releasing the videos?
Yes.
Okay. All right, so if you're ready, I'm ready.
Yeah, I'm ready.
Hey now, and how are you doing? Want to welcome you to the next episode of Peace, Love, and Bring a Bat. Today, we're going to bring my friend Stephanie on. We're going to talk a little bit about mental wellness. You know I love talking about that, and so does she. I can't wait for you to meet her. We'll learn some resources. We're going to learn some amazing things. How are you doing this morning, Stephanie?
I'm doing good. I'm happy to be here. So thanks for having me.
Okay, no, thank you. I know we've connected and we were on a long call,
Yeah.
and even before in the green room or before we started, we had some really deep conversations. So I appreciate it. I appreciate you. Why
Thanks.
don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, just generally?
Yeah, so I'm from the Midwest originally. Grew up kind of in a small, very, Christian town, and then basically studied finance, was working in that for a few years, and just knew I wanted to do something more with my life, and just really connected with people and struggled with my mental health a little bit along the side. I'm glad I was raised in a time where that conversation was more palatable to be had. Everyone, even though I grew up in a town where we weren't really talking about it as much, I did find spaces where I could talk about my depression and how I struggled with just this heaviness around me that maybe I didn't necessarily see with my sisters and stuff. So I really, when COVID hit, I think it was a wake up call for everyone, but especially for myself, I found myself wondering like what was the point in needing something a little more tangible and more meaningful from my career. And so I took a year off from corporate and really did some soul searching as a lot of people do, and I was really sad. There was a lot of things going around in my life at the time beyond COVID. I, came out as a queer woman. I also was in a really unhealthy relationship, and I think all of it compounded to create this break that I really, really needed. And I found when I was on that break, a lot of people were saying, good for you. This is good. Even though it felt like the scariest time of my life, I felt like I was destroying my whole career and giving everything up. But it led me to create Say More, which is an online mental wellness community. I founded it less than a year ago, and I'm really trying to bridge community and mental health with everyday people and just start those conversations. So I'm really proud of that, and also still admitting that I struggle with my mental health every day. So yeah, that's a little bit about me.
No, I think that's great, and I want everybody to understand we all struggle with mental wellness. So you can either admit it or not admit it,
Right.
and that's the really one of the things that we're going to be talking about. I'm going to make sure that this episode comes out in May, or I'm going to really do a promise that it's going to come out in May.
Right, right.
Uh, but we have to acknowledge it. While things might be going really well, there's still be my days. I mean, there was a day, maybe it was last week, that I don't know what happened for myself. Everything was going well, but then
Yeah.
something crept in to your mind, and you're like, man, Tuesday night sucked. I'm like, what the hell happened? I just had some really good things going on,
Yeah.
and then I was like, okay, I just wrote it out, and I knew what was going to happen. I knew I had to write it out. So one
Mhm.
of the things that I'd ask you is, how do you ride out some of those days? Because every day isn't going to be a sunny day, and we don't always ride unicorns.
Right. I mean, I find myself absorbing a lot of people's feelings
Mm.
just naturally. So, like you said last week, I had a lot of tough conversations by accident about people were talking to me about grief and very specific, heavy things. And it was beautiful. And I love those types of conversations, but I just left the conversation feeling really sad for everyone. And I think that's an interesting place to be
Mm.
because you're empathizing so much, but also you're so affected. So it's kind of a balance that I have to navigate. But I would say when I'm writing those out, I try and I talk to my friends and family, but I try and see it as a superpower. And I think a lot of people kind of also are using it as that of like, oh, I'm so glad I can empathize with people so much, or I'm so glad I can feel so much. But at the same time, whatever I need, like normally I'll just like close the blinds. I need to be in a dark room and I'll just take a minute and kind of try and like separate myself and let it out and then just go move on and like get some good sleep. But yeah, it's a challenge. Like you said, I think you never know what the day is going to bring and you'll find yourself being, it's a roller coaster. And that's kind of what I think is toughest to navigate. I'm curious what you think too, David. But I just think, yeah, one day you're like, oh, everything, I'm so optimistic and everything feels really good. And the next day you don't know, who you're going to encounter or what feelings are going to arise and it feels out of control. And I think that's kind of the hardest part with at least mental wellness.
Yeah, no, for sure. I think it's just wellness, right? It's
Yeah.
just people. You could be feeling great about anything. I don't mind using the word mental wellness, but everybody goes, well, it separates it. And I just want to go, that's living, right? It's part
Yeah.
of our body. So when you have an upset stomach, do you go, I have an upset stomach and that's not part of my health, right? It's
Right.
part of your health.
Right.
Mental wellness is part of your health.
Mm,
Right, when I used to teach the recovery coaching, there's 7 aspects of your life, and not every aspect of your life is 100%. You're not at a level 10, and you
right.
sometimes need to adjust. One of the mentors I was working with yesterday asked me, where am I at with everything? And with my physical body, I'm not so great. I mean, I'm like at a
Right.
5. I work out a little bit. I know I should be doing more.
Mm,
And my goal is right after this interview to go outside. We have beautiful weather. I'm like, all
right.
right, I got to do it. I have a couple hours for free. I need to do this, and I can't keep talking about it. I need to do it.
Right.
And that's the question I'd love to ask you is when you felt things heavy, and then it sounded like you started unpacking some of the heaviness, the expectations of others.
Yeah.
How do you do that? What would be a way that you would how do you do it for yourself? But how would you suggest others to start to feel comfortable to unpack the challenges that they're experiencing?
Yeah. I mean, again, I think it's a beautiful thing. I think turning it into a positive. I used to always say I feel too much, and that felt like a negative. And
Mm.
it can be like if it is too much. But I do find that when I was starting to unpack why I was feeling so down and listening to some of these people's stories that they had dealt with grief, it was almost this, oh, I can't imagine what that would feel like. That sounds terrible. And then it creates this fear in me of, oh, when I have to experience that or go through that. And then it becomes this spiral that I think a lot of people can relate to. But I think slowing down, and I was talking to a friend of mine about it, and I was just like, it's so sad. Like they're so lonely, and I just don't know what to do. I don't know how to help. And she was like, just you being there was helpful, or just like having that space and creating that space for yourself to say, okay, I am so glad I'm capable of feeling this way, but also it's not my job to, heal anyone or even heal myself at the time. I just kind of found I needed to cry. I literally was crying a lot and just
Sure.
releasing all of it, and I felt so much better afterwards. And kind of what you were saying with going on a walk or going outside, like, I think what your body needs. And sometimes it is, for me, shut the blinds and just take a minute. But other times it's get outside, touch grass for just take a
Sure.
minute.
Ground yourself.
Yeah, and I love that. I love that too because the same things aren't going to work every time. And so like just evolving and journaling or meditation or what have you, or praying. I know a lot of people have different coping mechanisms, but just I really want people to see it as a positive, and like you said, everyone goes through it, so it's not necessarily, "I'm alone, I'm the only one who's feeling this, and I don't know how I'm gonna go on." It's like we all do, whether it's obvious or not, and I think to give yourself room to have those really bad days and just say, "Okay, tomorrow's a new day," I think that's huge, and I'm grateful that I can have these experiences and talk with someone like you who also has this experience because there's nothing better than talking to someone who knows exactly what you feel like. One of the first times when we met, we were both talking about our experience with depression and like even, just darker thoughts. And I was like, wow, I love that conversation. Thinking if I had known you during that darkest moment for me and just had a quick conversation, hey, like this is what's going on through my mind. And you were like, yeah, I get it. That would have been everything for me. So I think just finding the right people that you could trust to talk that through with without feeling judged and self-conscious is huge.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think that creating that safe space, and when I used to in my previous life, I thought I had that safe space, and I thought I even created the safe space. But now when I step back, I realize, for a lot of reasons, I didn't create that safe space, not intentionally. In fact, even
Right.
just yesterday, I was on a podcast and we had an exchange of services, right? So as part of the product, I gave him a coaching session. He gave me a coaching session, and I always say I'm a protector, or I used to say I'm a
Ooh,
protector, which is true that I love to protect people, but am I doing it so they don't get hurt? Like I've learned recently with my children, if I protect them too much, because like my parents did, they did it with love, but I didn't experience some things because of not having that opportunity. You gotta scrape your knees. You gotta
right.
have some of the things to become who you are, and by doing that and having that growth, because that's the conversations that we need to have. The real communication is to understand what you're experiencing. What then that was why we connected, as you mentioned
Yeah.
earlier.
Yeah. I'm curious what your safe space looks like compared to mine, just even because I know you're older than me, you're a man. Like, I'm just curious what that looked like before and after when you were saying you thought you had a safe space and now you might not.
Well, I thought truthfully, so that's a great question. So for me, I really thought I had a partner who was with me, who I could have that safe space where I could say almost anything I want with, um, but because I thought we had open lines of communication,
Right.
and not realizing that she didn't feel the same way, and she
Mm,
didn't feel she could talk to me because previously, and from her experiences, she had people who yelling at her, and I had anger issues. I yelled. That's all I did. But for somebody who's experienced that much of her life
mm,
and had worse than what I did, it just brings back those things. And when you start seeing things, when you're away from a situation, you can see it. When you continue to grow, when you dive, that's where I've worked on myself. The person I was 5 years ago is not anything close to the person I am now. I have
right.
not wasted the past 5 years, because I've grown and I see things differently and I feel it differently. That's why
Mm,
even last week when I was feeling really heavy, I was like, what's going on? Why am I feeling like this? What was my trigger? And
right.
was it justified? So sometimes our triggers are justified, but being able to look at that and then do what I needed to do, sat with myself, and then tell the person who I was with, saying, look, that didn't make me feel good. It's not all on you, but these are the actions that I'm having. And those are the
Right.
conversations I have now. I mean, now when I talk about God a little bit more than people, and people come at you, no matter, used
Yeah.
to,
It's a very,
God
yeah.
was the safe thing, right? God is the safe
Mhm.
thing. And you're like, you thought. But because I come from a Jewish faith, if I mention Jesus, people are like,
Ooh,
oh, you converted. And I'm like, no, I just
right.
talk about the historical figure, the God figure, of whatever you want to do. As I once said, I don't pray through Jesus. I go
Mhm.
directly to the boss. That's how my
Mhm.
teachings are. But that doesn't mean that I'm right. It just means that's the way that I was taught and I believe. And
Right.
those who go through other ways, go through Jesus or whatever they feel, or not any God. So I have friends who are atheists who are like, no, it's just an energy. Okay, I'm with you on that also. It
Right.
doesn't matter. I don't know. There's no. That's why they call it faith.
Right.
And and when we build that along and have those conversations, that makes us stronger. So that's
Yeah.
how I create my safe space. So sometimes I love being around other people, but so there's a lot of times now that I love being by myself, and I just
Yes.
sit in what I need to do and see what I'm really feeling.
Right. And you said that you feel it differently. And I really like the way you said that. Can you also elaborate? I'm sorry, I'm like interviewing you now, but
No,
I'm
no,
just
that's great. No,
yeah, yeah.
I love it. So I feel it differently, where I used to feel everybody was attacking me, or that I needed to feel better. I needed to protect and all these things. And through my protections, I overprotected. And because of that, so I just feel it differently. I see it differently. I have to let go a little bit, the things that we held on to. So I'm sure some of the weight that you had in your life, you were holding on to. If somebody knows, you know, that I'm not, what society tells
Yeah.
us, what happens. So again,
Right.
when we go back to the mental wellness, right? So everybody
Yeah.
goes, well, you're crazy. Well, and I got called right after my suicide attempt. I got called crazy, white trash. I got called really horrible names. And I'm like, okay, those are names, and maybe that's your view of what I am, and that's your view. That doesn't mean that's what
Yeah.
I view. And even when we say crazy, we can go crazy, but
Yeah.
it's not really a place, and it's really not. It's just the way we see things. Even when you
Yeah.
sit down and talk with people, and I've just done that recently with some handicapped people over the past couple of days, and you sit and talk with them, they have the same wishes, dreams, and heart that we do.
Yeah.
And I am putting this, you know, with people who are experiencing mental wellness. When you're yelling at your kids, that's a mental break, right? We shouldn't be
Yeah.
yelling at our kids. Fact is, we're going to yell at our kids. We're going to yell at our partner. We're going to have an argument. That's okay. It's the communication and the learning afterwards is saying, hey, Stephanie, I apologize. I might have raised my voice. That wasn't right. I'm not defending my thing, but this is what I was feeling and having those deeper conversations. So that's where I go into now, having those conversations, even if they are tough, telling you what I feel like, and then we can have that conversation moving forward.
Definitely. I think language is so important in so many ways. I know people get tripped up on vernacular or certain words, but the crazy word, I think it's just people are uncomfortable. They're scared. And I'm curious if you've heard about almost like the contagion effect where people don't really want to be around people who are quote
Yep.
unquote mentally unstable or whatever you want to call it because they're scared it might rub off on them or they'll be awakened to something. And I just think everyone's so afraid of being, different and othered, of course, but also not well, like obviously not well. Or, even you can look at celebrities like Kanye West or whatever. It's so scary to see that someone so talented and kind of evolve in these ways. So, yeah, I think language is so important and so revealing of how other people interpret and try and like put their view on you. Like what you said, that's not my truth. That is not accurate for me. But if they see it that way, then that's how they feel. So it's just interesting. I've been learning how to use the right language too when I have like a mental break, like you said, or something, or I lash out. I used to be really angry. And so I think that was my trigger. And I would just be so frustrated and angry. And that's all I could do was lash out. And now I realize like delivery and tone and everything is huge. It's not just like I want to be very careful with how I speak to people because that stuff does not just go away. And so that's been a new challenge for me. And it's really nice because my uncle the other day, he's like, you have grown so much. Like we used to all be afraid of you. And now I just feel like you're a lot more level-headed with like how you interact with people and stuff. And I was like, thank you, because I've been working really hard on that. Like I'm glad you can see it, because you can't always see it or feel it from the people around you. But I think that's huge today, but especially in the age of the internet and stuff. People are just saying, a lot of things online and everything, and it's kind of a lost art to just like take a second and be like, how do I actually feel, and why is this happening? So
No, 100%. And then that's what it is also the language, the growth. I
yeah,
wish I would have learned some of these things earlier. Don't get me wrong.
yeah,
Being older, you're like, oh, and some people go, well, it's because you're older now, you don't care. I'm like, no, I did care then. I just didn't know I was doing something wrong. And I don't want to be like, oh, I didn't know. Some things we should know. But we also don't know without feedback. And
exactly.
how do you learn something without feedback? If you're an educator,
Mm,
somebody doesn't pass your test, you don't just go, okay, you failed, goodbye. It's let's educate you why you didn't learn what you needed to learn. And some
yes,
people don't want to put up with that in a
right.
relationship. And I understand that and I respect that greatly. But there's also people who don't know how to communicate and would rather run and blame somebody else. That
Exactly.
also is mental wellness because if you can't communicate even in a difficult situation, then that's a challenge just as a human being. You're,
Right.
you're not going to always get unicorn rainbows and lollipops.
Yeah. I love what you said about feedback. I think that's and kind of even who to take feedback seriously from. I think what you said
Mhm.
with the stranger saying, "Oh, you're crazy." I'm very sensitive to feedback in the sense I'll take it very seriously. If you're in my inner circle and you're saying, "Steph, you're out of line here," I'm like, "Okay, let me see what I think about the situation and how I can see their way of how I handled that." But if it's a random person who's like, "You're crazy," I also am kinda like, "Am I crazy?" And so I think it's also interesting to take in feedback, assess it, and agree or disagree and kind of understand why a little bit more. That's so huge.
Yep.
I think getting feedback right now, like and you being a protector, it sounds like you were a little bit more defensive or just wanting to have, like, "Oh, I don't know if you identify with this, but, oh, I'm, the man of the family, like, I need to protect everyone and, like, take on this like tension in this realm of being the family guy and everything like that. And I just think that's a lot to carry without giving you space to say this is hard or this is too
I,
much or can I have a bad day? And that's just also something I've seen in my own family where the men I'm like, I want you to be able to just be a human. I don't want you to always
Yeah,
be like,
I didn't know how to carry it, and
yeah,
thankfully it was also so how my dad, he was also a protector,
okay,
and he'd be one of those guys who like in my house. So he really wasn't physical. I don't want to make it sound like that he was physically abusive, but there was physical stuff that went on, and but in the house he might treat me like bad, he might treat my sister bad, but outside the house nobody got to mess with us, and he got into that, and that's how I was a lot of ways also not realizing it, right? That the things that we don't realize, the things that we're not taught, and I did that for my own children. Like
right,
don't mess with my children. I can yell at my kids. I'm allowed to yell at my kids. Yeah, you are, but what is that doing? And then until I was able to have those conversations with my kids, after my suicide attempt, like
mm,
they're uncomfortable about talking about it, but I talk about it and I tell them because I don't want you to think that now you can't talk to me about anything.
right,
And since that time, I mean, I've also have gone through more stressful things that I would have never expected I could have handled. And I'm
yeah,
just like, yeah, okay, I'm frustrated. Or if I snap, I go, look, I'm frustrated. Let me tell you why. And that's the lesson that I'm teaching my children now is let me tell you why. Just don't yell at me and be like, I give up. No, no. Tell me why. What does it feel like?
right,
And that's the real growth piece that I want to push out there because
yeah,
that's what I've learned. And I wish I learned it earlier because it would have avoided some of the challenges in my life. But I would have maybe had said other challenges. But now when challenges come up, I know how to handle it better. I also acknowledge what am I feeling? Why am I feeling it that way? If I don't understand it, I that doesn't mean I forget about it. But I go, okay, I'm not going to then dive into stuff that make myself up. Let's figure it out and adjust and use your resources. I had never always used my resources regularly. So I know when I was so last Tuesday when I was not feeling well, I was like, okay, one, I know no matter what, I'm going to go to acupuncture on Wednesday. That's when my appointment is, and no matter what, I know I'll get reset.
mm,
And even so, Tuesday night was not really great. Wednesday morning, I woke up still feeling it, but I fought through it. I meditated. I still used my own resources. And then I went to acupuncture and I completely reset just by talking to
mm,
somebody about it who I felt that safe space. So
right.
knowing the right people to find your safe space is always important. I am really glad that you're enjoying the show, and I hope you follow us on all the podcast hosting sites, as well as Facebook, Peace, Love, and Bring a Bat, or you can follow me, Uncle Dave, David Shemetsky, at Facebook, Instagram, Clubhouse, and www.davidshemetsky.com. I also would enjoy for you to contact me if you want to just have some feedback. You need somebody to talk to at peacelovebringabat@gmail.com. Love to hear your feedback. Thanks.
100%. I know I had therapy last week, which was perfect timing. I have had the same therapist for a few years, which is highly recommend when you find someone that works for
Yeah.
you to stick with them because she knows so much about me now, so it's really helpful like in general from past to present. But yeah, I think that's one of the resources I lean on hard, and sometimes I only see her monthly, but sometimes I'll move a therapy session up and I feel like a failure because I'm like, no, I don't need this, or I'm not whatever. But I always say life is long. Like you don't know what comes up, what's going to come up for you, like what we've been saying today. And
Yeah,
so
sure.
to have that session was crucial for me because I felt crazy and I felt a little out of control and I was really frustrated. And she was telling me, this is normal. This is very natural. And this is, okay. And like all the problems that felt insurmountable to me were very much not, is
Right.
what I left from the conversation. And even when I had her, when I was like kind of having suicidal ideation and stuff, she was very much not worried about me in the sense that I would do something, which was kind of comforting because I was scared of myself. And I don't know if you felt that way. But
Yeah,
yeah, so I don't
when
know.
I first came out of that 36-hour period, when I did try to actively, so I called up my therapist, like, I need an appointment. This is what happened. And it was right before the Jewish holidays. He goes, do I need to talk to you right now, or do you need to go to a hospital? I go, I
Mm,
don't need to go to a hospital. I'm not lying to you. I wouldn't risk his license because I really respected. I had already been working with him for many years, and I hadn't seen him in a while. But he was like, "What
okay.
happened?" And he goes, "Well, we'll have a session." And That's the thing is sometimes the way we're carrying it and
Yeah.
knowing that you have that, it doesn't mean that you are a failure. We use those, which is a negative word. It just
Yep.
means at that moment we couldn't handle it. We weren't able to balance it in the right way, and learning that balance and how to balance your life, your resources, and also that's why I teach how to really self-regulate. So I
Yeah.
know with myself that if in the middle of the night I wake up in whatever I'm feeling, I need to self-regulate. And what does that look like? What does that mean to me? And that's the really powerful part. How would you like what would you suggest to somebody who's actively like, oh my God, something happened or they perceived something happened? It doesn't mean, right?
Mhm.
I dropped a cup and mom's gonna be upset that I spilt on the rug.
Right. I think yeah, I think slowing down because I've with as I the last few years I've become more of an overthinker. So that kind of dialogue in my head is now more frequent than I'd like it to be. But yeah, I think just you have to slow everything down and kind of, at least for me, I try and get to the facts of, okay, this is what's happening. These are the possibilities of what it looks like in the future. And honestly, like last week's therapy session, I was really disappointed in myself because I felt like I had let some boundaries go and I had not really taken good
Mm.
care of myself. And that's why I was in this darker place where I just felt really overwhelmed. And I think just it's a constant battle. I treat myself like a child sometimes where I'm like, okay, this is what you need, this is what you don't need. And like we have to continuously maintain that environment. Otherwise you can get out of whack. And so like boundaries for me is like taking my alone time. I just had not taken enough alone time in the last few weeks
Yeah.
and done what I want to do, like just read or like slow down. I'd overextended myself. So things like that where you can kind of feel it coming on, this like extra anxiety or this like heavier feeling. And that's when you really have to, for me, I just take a second. I'm like, oh shoot, like I've done this again, or I haven't taken the necessary precautions to make sure that I'm okay on a daily basis. And whatever that looks like, I talk to a lot of friends about boundaries and stuff because that is just so it's good for everyone. And I always tell my
Oh my
friends,
God. Yeah.
I'm like, I
For
love it.
sure.
As soon as
Yeah.
someone says boundary, I'm like, especially to me, if someone's like, hey, I have to put a boundary in place, I'm like, okay, they've thought about this and they are getting resentful of me because of whatever, So like this is helpful for both of us in our relationship. I just think it's such a helpful tool and whatever it looks like to you. I was just talking to a friend and she says, I really don't like it when I have a visitor and they stay in my apartment when I'm not there. And that's a boundary I need to put in place. And I was like, okay, yeah. So like when she's not in the house, like that first the visitor can't be in the house, like that's just something that's quirky to her. It doesn't have to make sense to everyone else, It's just that helps her relationships
Well,
too.
that's the really important part. It doesn't have to make sense to everybody else. It's
Yeah.
your boundary.
Right.
And I've been talking about that even with vision. It's your
Mhm.
vision. If you've been given a vision, then that's yours.
Yeah.
And to feel boundaries is because we're wondering what other people are thinking about, is my boundary right or wrong? No, it's just your
Yes.
boundary. There is no
Right.
right or wrong. We as a society, we place too many right, wrongs, or whatever.
Right.
But I create wellness plans when with my clients.
Yeah.
In the old days, I was creating a lot of wellness plans. And when you go off your plan, right? If you're walking a path, that's what I talk about. Is if you're walking a path, if you get off your path, if you go off the highway, you're going to hear the right. It's
Yes.
going to be a reminder, and your body sometimes is that sound. A
Yes.
lot of pieces to that, um, and we need to do that. And we have
Yeah.
to acknowledge that, hey, I went off the road. It made a sound I didn't like, that was
Right.
reminding me to get back on the road, or a
Right.
way that I was behaving wasn't congruent with who I am.
Yeah, and I really like the getting off the path I think is really because you will get off the path. I think that's just like point blank
And
period.
sometimes it's okay to be off the path.
Yeah.
That's where you'll learn, right?
Right.
It's not just follow a path, but you also know what's right for you at that
Right.
moment.
Right. And that could change too, like what it looks like. I know growing up, like my family is very extroverted. And so we were always playing games and sports and activities. And I think as time went on, when we were coming home for the holidays, I was trying to say, okay, I need couple hours a night to just like recharge. I don't want to do this. And there it was such an uproar of like we never get to see each other because my family's all over the country. And why? We want to spend time with you and like we need to really take this time together. And I was like this is not an insult. This is not that I don't want to hang out with you. This is that I don't want to be exhausted and being pissed off at like a later like whether we're playing a card game or what and just take out my energy on you when I'm just depleted, and that's still a conversation I'm having with them sometimes because I get it. Time is so sacred and I completely agree with that. But at the same time, I'm telling you what I need to make sure that we're still going to have a good time when we are together. It's really hard with family. I'm sure you can see that as well, just because they known you your whole life. So they
Yeah.
think that they know what's best as well.
Well, yeah, but they think they know what's best for what they feel,
Yes.
and I've had those conversations with my family. I'm like, no, that's not right for you.
Right.
And I'm like, if it's not right for you, that's okay. You do you, I do me, and I'll
Yeah.
tell you what's not right, and I'll tell you why. That's the sort of new me, and then I'm
Yeah.
gonna be like, look, that's good for you. Okay, I'm not gonna fight with you about
Right.
politics or anything. Those are your
Right.
beliefs. Those are your things. The same thing with my mental wellness. I know what I do. Like people go, do you have to talk about it all the time? Yes, I do.
Mm.
Because I want to know that if I'm in a room with somebody who needs a safe space, or some of my friends, even the close friends, are like, I know you always share. Can I just share this today? I'm feeling
Yeah.
fine. And, I go, yes, that's the reason why, is to say when it's not okay, I'm the guy who's safe, right?
Right.
That's how I came with the nickname Uncle Dave. I said the things that shouldn't have been said in a
Mm.
place of, we were in a senator's office, and I just reset everybody and said what needed to be said. And afterwards, all the mothers who were going through substance abuse, whose children had gone through substance abuse, came out and they gave me hugs and they were like, "You're like everybody's uncle. What did you just do?" I go,
Oh,
we shifted the energy from a negative to like, no, 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 no. And everybody got it. It still didn't necessarily lead us where we wanted to, but we were
mm.
able to shift the energy and you provide a safe space for those people in the future.
Definitely. And I think coming from someone like yourself, I just don't, to be honest, to be completely frank, I just don't see a lot of older white men like being creating that space. Like it's
Now
very
it's
still.
tough.
Yeah.
It's
And so
tough.
I'm like
You
really,
get hit with a baseball, rub it off, buddy, walk it off, and
yeah.
even the injury. I'm glad to see it in sports, professional sports. So we're looking at high level, high pay, high net worth individuals who are saying, I'm walking away for me.
Mhm. Yeah.
Uh, you know, I respect that. In fact, there's an organization that I support. We're all the same, and who's mainly professional sport, and they talk about the mental wellness, the strains of being a professional athlete. While
Oh,
we think about it, oh, they have millions of dollars and they have all the answers, but we also then highlight when they commit suicide, Anthony Bourdain and stuff like that. We think
yes.
that we know it because they're just living a fancier life. They might have a nicer car or a nicer place, but that doesn't mean the lives that they're living doesn't have stresses either. And if they don't learn how to manage it properly, that becomes a huge problem.
Yes. And I think even for myself, I used to think no one would ever know. I like really struggled with depression or whatever. If anything were to happen, they would be shocked. And I think that's also even like my friends would say something and I was just like, that's not a good thing that you would never know, whether that be about a celebrity, you or me, that it's like,
Sure.
oh, that's not honest, but it's also not, it's like they're hiding a part of themselves because it's not safe or it's not, welcomed in society at all, or they don't want to be seen as crazy or unstable or whatever you want to call it. And that frustrated me so much because even I think when Twitch, that famous dancer on Ellen,
Yep.
died by suicide, everyone was like, "I'm shocked." Like he was the happiest guy. He lit up every room, and you hear that with other celebrities too. And it just makes me so annoyed because I'm like, that's part of it. That's why it's so
Yeah.
hard because these people like are so. I think of
It-
them as like the most empathetic people and the like joyous people, and they're not. They're just like us. Like they're also like, I can't do it today, or what have you. So I don't know.
and that's why, like during the pandemic, a lot of people would call me up and on work calls and, "How you feeling today, Dave?" Today's not such a good day. And then
Mm,
because I felt safe with those people. I might not have said it with everybody. I don't,
right.
but having the ability to do that, or even now when I put things on Facebook, it was a couple of weeks ago, I put a video and everybody's like, "Are you okay? Are you okay?" I go, "Yes." And one friend was like, "Are you sure?" I go, "Yes, thank you for saying that. But if you can't trust me that at this point that I'm going to say yes, that I'm not just saying yes because it's the right thing. I'm telling you, I'm allowed to feel the feels. but I
Right.
also am okay with sharing that I have those feels because I know you have those things if you admit them or not. That's not my,
Right.
that's not on me. That's on you that you know,
Yes.
and then with that friend, he kept on pushing a little bit. And I go, okay, I'm not okay. What are you going to do now? You're not, not in my local area. What
Right.
is your strategy?
Right.
As a teaching moment, what is your strategy? Okay, so I'm not okay. I'm only sharing it with you. What is your strategy? I don't know. I'm like, okay, so then we're
Yeah.
back at the same place. And not that I was trying to make him feel bad. And I was explaining that to him. I go, but if I tell you I'm okay, I'm at the point where I will tell you I don't feel well today. I'll get through it. Or I reach out to other people or just have
Yeah.
conversations with people who still might not make it feel better, but still be able to move that to the next level.
Yes. Yes. And I think trusting, you have to trust people who maybe the people who don't necessarily experience the breadth that you or I do as far as, the darkness sometimes is they have to trust, I think that and sometimes this isn't the case where you're not doing everything you can to take care of yourself or what have you, but I think a lot of the times when we're in these spaces, it's like, okay, you need to trust that if I say I'm okay or I'm not okay, that's exactly what the situation is at the time. And I'm going to try and remedy it as best as I can. But also you have to trust that I live with this every day and like I know myself the best and like, am gonna try
Right.
and make it better or what have you. So that's also what I struggled to with my family is I feel like they were alarmist about if I wasn't okay. And again, we're all over the country, so it was hard to feel connected to them all the time. And it almost bothered me more that they were like, "Ah, well, then what's gonna happen?" And I'm just like, I'm in therapy, I'm on all this stuff, da, 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 whatever. And I was like, "And I'm okay. Like I'm gonna figure it out, and I'm gonna reach out to the people who I need to locally or whatever you said too."
Right.
And I just think that's a frustrating part for people who deal with it as well. Of you
Because
know,
I've had this conversation with family members and friends. I go, "Are you saying this because you feel uncomfortable and you're not willing to?" And a
that
lot of
part.
times that's the case. And I don't want to make it sound that it is all the time, but a lot of that is because somebody's not feeling good or they don't know what to do when that happens, and that's
Yes.
why these type of conversations come up. Even this is part of that conversation. Is like, look, I don't want to have to do the extra work on the podcast, to be honest, and maybe that's
Yeah.
why I'm going to leave this in. Is but I knew what was important. My met because to worry about for the next few minutes as we're gonna wrap up the episode
Right.
anyway. I could have been
Right.
like, all right, I'll call her back in a few minutes, but I never know. And
Yeah.
I that's one of the other things I've learned. I wasn't listening. So when we talked
Mm.
about my other relationship, I wasn't listening well enough, and now I listen maybe too much. I still will be guilty of asking too many questions. Uh, but I'd rather ask too many questions to let the person know I care, or at least what I'm seeing. And then again, it's on the other person to have that communication back. And
Exactly.
and I think
Yeah.
that's really what we've been talking about today is just one, if you're a person who needs to talk to somebody, find the right people to talk to, professionals, your friends, religious figures,
Right.
if that's what you feel comfortable with, but also talk to yourself. The most
Yeah.
important person to talk to is yourself and know what you really need. Don't lie about it. Don't
Yeah.
lie who you are. Don't lie, of what you need. If you need something, say what you need.
Yeah. Completely agree. Yeah, because you know yourself the best and you're the only one who lives in your body. And so whatever that looks like for you, that's your deal. And so it's really important to know what you need and try other things if you think it's not working. I just hope people in general want to know themselves really well and want to make their life as hopefully enjoyable or peaceful as possible, whatever that looks like. That's my goal every day is just peace. How can I get there?
Okay. So as we are wrapping up the episode, well, what I always say, let's go plant a seed in the magic
Mm.
garden. What's something that you'd love to plant that you would hope would grow within others?
Yeah, I always say you're not alone, but even more so, there's so many people out there who want to help. In my work already, I've just met so many people who care about so many things, especially right now with everything that we're seeing in the media and on the news and everything. It just feels really heavy and dark, and there's so many people rooting against
Sure.
us. I can't emphasize enough how many people I meet every day that are just wanting to help and just little acts of love that you see on the street, or someone drops something and someone else picks it up for them. There's just so many little things that people are good, like they care and they want to help. So please don't spend too much time scrolling, or don't spend too much time just getting in those. That's what, like, the system feeds off of that, and like go outside and experience real people and get that coffee, or go on that walk and wave to your neighbor. I just think people want to help and connect more than ever. And I just don't believe what you're saying online. I just really feel like we're all like, I want to help you, whoever's listening or whatever, like whatever you need. I just think I care. Like there's a lot more people who care than you think. So I just want people to go away with that message that you and I are literally making careers off of this, is just trying to help other people. Like there's so many of us who are doing that, giving up their normal, stable lives, corporate or what have you, just to like try and get closer to connecting people and making the world a better place. So please go into this year, no matter what happens, that there's more good than there is bad.
Yeah, well, I think there's a saying from John Lennon, that his mother had taught him: whenever there's times of trouble, look for the people who are doing good, and when
Yeah.
you're doing good, that really becomes the people you focus on, not all these other people who are telling you all the reasons why it can't be done.
Right.
Figure out the ways that it can be done, and figure out the people who really meet your heart. Really
Yeah.
figure out the energy, acknowledge your energy.
Right. Completely agree. I love it. Ugh.
All right.
Yeah.
So as we wrap up, how can people contact you and to support your organization?
Yeah, so I'm currently running a business called Say More. You can find us on Instagram at Say More, SAYMORE Co, on Instagram, LinkedIn, TikTok, everywhere on social media. And also saymoreco.com is the online platform. We say find your people. So if you have a story to tell, or you feel really inclined to ask a question or engage, please go on there and talk to people. And yeah, I hope to see you guys on the platform or on social media or whatever. And yeah, just tell me what you think and how this resonated with you, this episode. And Dave and I will be working together for probably a while. So
Yeah.
just know that you'll be seeing us. We have similar goals. So I'm just excited to be in these communities.
All right. Well, thank you so much.
Yeah.
And for everybody, as always, peace and love in your life. Bring as much as you can in your life. And when you're bringing it back, just bring awesome thoughts. That's
Yeah.
it. Hit your sweet spot with all the thoughts that you have. Put it out there. Be honest with yourself. Talk to yourself and swing away. Thank you and God bless. Boom. We're done.
Awesome. Okay, that was great.
Yeah.
Wait, so Dave, tell me, like,
Hold on.
when
I'm
do we
just
want
gonna.
to schedule
Okay.
this and everything?
Just. Welcome, my friends, to the podcast that never ends, where we gather our clan and talk about peace and love in our lives, the difficulties along the journey, and how we rise up. We will experience a little thing I call cluberty together, find our sweet spot, and planting our seeds to watch them grow in our magic garden. I'm Uncle Dave, and our transformation starts right here.